Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio, everybody. What is going on? It is Gale here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi video. And today we're going to talk a little bit about GA Fest, of course, which happened a few days ago. And along with that, I want to talk about the 10th anniversary of the Danmachi anime and what project we could potentially get. Now, of course, if you guys going to enjoy this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of good stuff. It would be truly appreciated. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What would you guys like to see, of course, right? I know a lot of you guys are probably people who have already read these stories via Danmimo, but I also equally think there are a lot of you guys who are probably new to the series who don't know anything about any of the series and stories that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So let me know in the comment section down below, just based on, of course, a TLDR I'm going to give you guys and a synopsis of the stories that I'm going to give you guys. What would you guys like the most? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. Now, quickly, I want to talk about GA Fest. It happened a couple of days ago, of course, right? And GA Fest is basically similar to any other festival, any other convention slash sort of like a celebration that happens. It's run by GA Bunko, the same people who basically run and publish a lot of the Danmachi stuff, right? They're the same people who host this. And of course, we had the Danmachi cast come over and celebrate the last 10 years of the Danmachi anime. Now, of course, that included people like Matsuoka-san, the voice actor of Belle, Inori Minase, the voice actress of Hestia, Yoko Hisaka, or Hikasa, I think it is, the voice actress of Freya, and including all of the above, we also had a Charles VA for the first time make his appearance in the panel, effectively, and that was pretty cool to see, of course, right? Now, I had a chance to obviously watch a little bit of it, but I was kind of like, you know what, I was at work at the time, so I was like, you know what, I'll just come back and see if there's any big news coming out of GA Fest, which is usually where, you know, something usually gets announced for Danmachi. You know, be it a new light novel, be it a brand new anime adaptation, game, whatever it may be, GA Fest is usually where we will see it happen, right? And the fact that we didn't hear of anything was a little bit surprising to me. But I also think the reason for that is because we obviously had the big delay to the season, right? We saw season 5 get delayed. At this point in time, if we had the season ongoing, right, we would be on episode 14. I think episode 12 would have been when the delay happened. That week the delay happened. The following week would have been episode 13. And this week would have been episode 14, the past week. And then this week, upcoming week, would have been the final episode, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure at least that's how it would have gone. I could be wrong, though. I might be mixing up my dates. But nonetheless, right, it would have been episode 13, 14 at this point in time, and it would have probably made a lot of sense for them to probably announce something for the future, potentially, of Danmachi. Especially if it was episode 14, I think 100% we would have probably seen an announcement happen at GA Fest. But I think they had to probably postpone that announcement to, of course, when the season was actually going to air and finish, of course, later down the line, probably in April or May. We will see it happen, right? And it also makes sense that they make the announcement then as well, because the first ever episode of Danmachi, the anime that is, released back in 2015 in April. So it would make a lot of sense for them to actually make the announcement itself in April as well, in my opinion. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I hope that that will be the case, of course, right? Because I really do hope we do get a very big project announcement. I don't want it to be something tiny or something quite irrelevant, to be quite honest. Not to say, of course, right, you know, them announcing something like a brand new game or whatever it is, that would also be pretty big. But what I would like to personally see, if it's a 10th anniversary project for the anime, what I'm really hoping for is something to do with the anime. Now, personally, the first option, and I think the biggest option that they could make an announcement for, is season 6 airing, not like immediately, but like within a year or something, is my guess. I'd rather not. I would actually rather just not. Let's take a break from the main series for a little bit, maybe another year or two, maybe 3 years as well. I don't mind waiting for season 6 of Danmachi, you know, especially with the way season 5 was handled and everything. I really hope the people at, you know, be it Warner Bros, SB Creative, JC staff, even Omori sensei, they all need to look at themselves for a little bit and realize the blunders they've done with this season's production, to be quite honest. 100%. Because let's be real, how do you go from what was an effectively very smooth production in season 4? Yes, you could still notice some hiccups in season 4 as well. Let's not get it twisted. That Colosseum episode is still one of my favorites in the light novels. Absolutely butchered, in my opinion, in the anime. I did not like the Colosseum episode, but they need a break from the main series, and just generally as well, they need a break from creating the show, to be quite honest. What I would like is maybe another studio to come up and pick up the other aspects of Danmachi and maybe do the other Danmachi stuff that I want them to do, of course, right? And these are the projects that I'm really hoping that they do pick up if another studio comes into play, is my suggestion here. My suggestion, first and foremost, is let's see if another studio comes in. But if they have to stick with JC Staff, let JC Staff take 1.5 or 2 years and give them the right episode count. Then we can go from there. But either or, I don't mind it. I mean, both studios, if it's not JC Staff and it's somebody else, and or if it's JC Staff, they need the right episode count. That's all that matters to me, more so than anything else, to be honest. Because the thing is, right, the episode count makes a world of a difference. Knowing you have 22 episodes will give you a lot more of a break in that sense. Even though I know it's a lot more work, technically 22 episodes is a lot of work, right? But you also know like how you can set it up. A lot of the episodes can be build up as well, and I know people will find that a little bit boring, but having the right build up, having to do less work when it comes to the action aspect, of course, like for example in season 5, right, the first half is very much just like a lot of build up. There's very little action. There is action, of course, right, with Bell training with Hayden and everything, but it would have been a lot more drawn out. So episode count, I think, matters a lot. So those are the hopes I have. But now let's talk about the projects I would like to see as part of the 10th anniversary anime project. I was gonna say 10th anime anniversary project, which would have made sense as well, but still, this is what I would like to see. Okay, this is what I would like to see. So first and foremost, I think the biggest one that everybody would like to see, and I think the one that everybody wants to still see, even after the abysmal season 1 we had of it, was of course SwoRoria. I think SwoRoria is something that we do need desperately so at some point in the near future. I think, however, personally, to me, it is probably the least likeliest of... No, will I say it's the least likeliest? I think it's the third least likeliest of the 4, to be honest. I think it is the third likeliest one. If I were to place it in terms of what I expect to actually come off of this announcement, I would say there are 2 more that I would place higher than SwoRoria, which is a damn shame considering how integral SwoRoria is. For those of you guys who don't know what SwoRoria is, it's basically the side story. It's a spin-off, effectively, of the main story. Happens at effectively the same time, in the same continuity, same timeline, same time frame even, and it focuses on Eyes and the Loki familia way more. So you see Eyes getting major developments. Of course, a lot of people, if you watch the main series or if you read the main series or watch the anime of the main series, right, both, in my opinion, are very poor in getting Eyes to the forefront, in my opinion, right? The only good time they did something with Eyes was, of course, the Xenos arc. And I will say I blame this more on Omori sensei than I do blame it on JC Staff. I do blame JC Staff a little bit for more on the expressions of Eyes and stuff like that, but if it comes to just storytelling and her involvement in the main series, I'd say Eyes is extremely weak. Of course, we know in future light novels, Omori will correct that, but it's a damn shame that Eyes has just been probably the least developed female, or not least, but one of the least developed female characters in Belle's like close relations, effectively, with other female characters. You look at Ryu, you look at Seer/Freya, you look at Lily, I meant to say, Haruhime, Hestia. You see their developments, you see them building that bond with Belle heavily, and on the other side you have Eyes just slowly there building it, but not as obviously as you'd hope for it to be and expect it to be. SwoRoria does help with that quite a bit, and it also helps develop Eyes herself a lot more. And not to mention, not only Eyes as well, but like the rest of the Loki familia, you get a better idea of all of their motives, their feelings, their desires, their hopes, their dreams. Everything in that story is fantastic, and it still hosts one of my favorite stories in SwoRoria Volume 12. SwoRoria is probably what I think should be redone or done again or done or continued with. I don't know what their plans are, if they want to remake it or make a season 2. Maybe that's a debate we can have another day, another video that we can make. But I do think it is just less likely purely because of the fact that I think that they have distrust in it now, or mistrust in it, because of how bad season 1 was. Season 1's just generally from JC staff with their how badly they butchered every aspect of the story. Amori not letting that happen and letting it through. I don't know how he said, you know what, that can air. Let that air, because I wouldn't. I would, as the author, I would have said, yo, get this show off the fuckers, man. Get this show off the fuckers, because I can't bear this anymore. I'd be like, hey, listen, these guys gotta go. They gotta go, blood. But I think there's that. I think just the bad production. I think also, them putting it only on Amazon Prime, at least in globally, when Amazon Prime was not at its hypest at the time, or Amazon Prime was nowhere near what it is today. Back then, if you're talking about streaming anime specifically, it was primarily Crunchyroll with potentially like Hulu, I think it was, or High Dive basically was like the second option, which is crazy to say considering we know how bad High Dive is. So I think it doesn't help there as well, in my opinion, that they have that whole situation going on with SwoRoria, or this beef with SwoRoria behind the scenes when it comes to the anime front, because I think season 2 and season 3 should have already happened like ages ago, in my opinion. It's not even funny. We should have had those things happen like when season 3 or season 4 of Danmachi was airing. Around that period, basically, either before or after or in between the two, you'd have to have had season 3 and season 4 of SwoRoria. It's a damn shame we didn't. And yeah, it's crazy that we still don't. But I do believe that this is still this is still probably what should be, done. Do I think it will be done? No, I think it's the third option in the list of what I think is going to be done. Now we move on to the next option, and this one I think is the most likeliest option, and that is Asura Record. Asura Record is the 3rd anniversary Danmachi Memoria Freese story, which was obviously originally written by Fujino Omori entirely from start to finish. It was a 3-part story event, and it basically takes place 7 years before Bell comes to Orario during the Dark Ages. This is when the likes of Finn, Gareth, Riveria were not even level 6, they were only level 5. Atarl was level 6. Everybody was still very naive and young at the time, and the Loki and Freya familiars were just rising up to the top, or, well, they took the top places, but they were really making the name for themselves at this point still, as of course they had overthrown the Zeus and Hera familiars only 8 years before that. And this story is very, very, very important because a lot of developments happen with certain characters, with certain lore plot lines and storylines. This is a very important story as well. Like, I think if you're talking about what should be done, it would probably be going SwoRoria and then this. Like, this is, in my opinion, no doubt one of the best options for them to adapt, in all honesty, in terms of the anime. I generally do believe that to be the case. I mean, obviously we learned a little bit about the Asura Familia, of course, in season 4, but the events of season 4, the ones we saw where, of course, the Asura Familia got torn to shreds by the Juggernaut, right, by Juggy, that actually happens after the events of Asura Record. It happens, I think, about a year or two after the events of Asura Record. I think it's 2 years after the events of Asura Record. So this is obviously the development and, effectively the way everybody, becomes who they are now in Asura Record. Like Atarl learning to be the monster he is, the juggernaut of a powerhouse he is, right? Same thing with Finn, Gareth, and Riveria. They're learning more about what's reality as well. Because, like I said, this is them going up against a evil theme for the first time. We look at Danmachi, right? The main series, the stuff we see in the main seasons, right? We don't really go up against evil per se. We go up against monsters, but evil, I mean, you could probably say Jura and Dix were the closest you could get in the main series. You could also argue Freya as an antagonist is evil, with what she did and everything. But even still, with Freya, you could argue that there is a reason behind it, right? There's a backstory behind it. There is something there as well for Freya, for that to happen, right? You look at, of course, season 3 and season 4 with Jura and, Dix. Yes, they are evil, but they're not really the primary antagonists, or they're not really the end goal. They're not, Belle's not there to take them down at the end of the day. You could argue that, yes, that is also one of the objectives, but they're not there for that purpose, right? Whereas with Asura Record, it's all about villains, evil familiars, everything of the above. It is very, very interesting, and I genuinely think that if adapted right, and that's the key word here, if it's adapted right, hands down, this could be easily the best thing that they could do, honestly, in terms of, getting people's eyes on the Danmachi franchise. Because some of the action sequences, some of the developing story, the emotions, everything included in this is immaculate. It's some of the best, in my opinion. And honestly, this is where I could tell that Omori was really improving. He was really getting into his stride, of course, right? I mean, of course, the year before as well, he made an amazing story, which we'll be actually talking about in a moment as well. And then, of course, the first anniversary story with Danmachi Memoria Freese, Grand Day. They definitely you could tell that Omori was still in his, it was still, getting there. But then with Asura Record, he really got into his bag and cooked up an absolute heating storm of a meal here, man. A really, really good story. I think that this would be an amazing addition to the anime lineup of Danmachi. And again, it kind of also fits in really well with, obviously, the current storyline with Ryu as the focus, right? Obviously in season 4, she was the main focus. And even in season 5, she's basically up there as in terms of importance, right? With her connection to Freya and Seer, as well as her connection to Belle. And we know that the next episode that was going to air before season 5 got delayed was Asura Record. So them making this into a full-fledged anime would be absolutely brilliant, in all honesty. It would be absolutely brilliant. Now we move on to the third option, and this is the story that Omori made the year before Asura Record, and it is the Argonaut story. This story takes place about 3,000 years before the events of Danmachi even takes place. So yes, it is that old. It takes place in an age where gods didn't even exist. It is during the Age of Heroes, and it is the birth of the first ever hero. This story is very grounded, is the best way to put it. You don't have the fantastical or fantastical plot lines of the gods or anything of that sort. You don't have Falna, don't have skills, and very simple things like that make and break the heroes and adventurers of today. What you have here is humans, beings that are very grounded, that are very much dealing with their own shit, and you see the birth of a true hero there, somebody who's inspiring others, somebody who's developing, effectively relationships with every single person around him to make them better. In my opinion, while I do think Asura Record on a grander scale is much better and much stronger, I would easily put Argonaut as I would have put it as the third story that should be done, or even a story that I would like to see be done 100% by far and away, because I just find it so grounded, so emotional, so straightforward, if you want to say that, right? And I think Omori nailed that aspect entirely with the story, and it's why it's a lot of people's favorites as well. If they were to do an Argonaut story, I mean, first and foremost, I would really appreciate it if they did make sure that they linked it to the Danmachi franchise, saying okay, a Danmachi spin-off story or a Danmachi prequel Argonaut or something like that, Or is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon, prequel story or prequel Argonaut or something like that? You have to kind of put the Danmachi subtitle somewhere, or Argonaut, familiar myth, or something like that, because it is very important that people realize that there is a connection between Danmachi and this story. A lot of people may not realize that, but it is very heavily connected. Even though it's 3,000 years apart, there's a huge connection. I mean, you can see in terms of the appearances of the characters as to how there's a connection between the characters and stuff. So it would be amazing to see, of course, this be adapted into an anime format. Do I think will it get adapted? Unfortunately, I think this is the least likeliest one to get adapted, in my opinion, just because of how disconnected it is to the Danmachi franchise in terms of the anime and the main series. When I say how disconnected it is, I mean by like how far away the stories are to one another. I think that is something that they will fear and they will not want to execute, even though I feel like as its own thing, even if you disregard the whole Danmachi aspect of it, right? Just in terms of what the story is, I think this would be an amazing anime on its own. Honestly, I really genuinely do believe that. I mean, again, this is something I'd love to see, and I really hope that they do work on it in the future. But do I think it's going to happen? Unfortunately, I think it's the fourth likeliest option, sadly. For me, I would say this is third in terms of what I want to see be adapted in terms of the anime, for sure. In terms of like what I would like to see go alongside with the main series. Asura Record works really well, of course, in the current plotline. SwoRoria is running in the same time frame, develops the major characters that you need to know about, like Ice and everything in that series as well. Argonaut sets up the Danmachi lore effectively, and so in my opinion, that it definitely does deserve to get adapted as well in terms of the anime. 100%, no doubt about it. And now the final one that I have to talk about is, of course, 10th Vesta. I know the image is a bit weird, but you'll have to deal with it. I do apologize on that front. We're on Reddit for this one. But 10th Vesta is a story that was also adapted in Danmimo. It was, I should say adapted, I mean, it was created for Danmimo, of course, Danmachi Memoria Freese, the 4th anniversary of the game. And it is basically, the best way to put it, it's basically a sort of sequel to Arrow of Orion. Yes, that's why you see Artemis in there. It is basically a sequel to Arrow of Orion, and it doesn't take place in the canon timeline. It takes place in an alternate timeline when everything is almost pretty much done and over with, and basically the Hestia Familia are just traveling and going about to places and stuff like that. And we basically get to see a lot of interesting things that it would be hard for me to explain without delving into a couple of the spoilers. But trust me when I say this, it still has a lot of lore attached to it in terms of, certain characters and their history with the series, with previous heroes and stuff like that in the Age of Heroes. There's also a lot of connection to, just generally the gods themselves and understanding the gods and whatnot as well. Their story, their backstory and everything. It is great. It is a very good story and it's very solid. I think that this is the second likeliest option to happen, because they could do a movie from it. 10th Vesta could easily be like a 2-part movie that they released as a sequel to Arrow of Orion, and it would work. I think that and obviously movies tend to generate a lot of revenue for anime nowadays. It's why you see Demon Slayer movie, look at the finale. It's a 3-part movie, the quintessential quintuplets, it was a movie. Kaguya-sama was a movie. It's crazy. Everything's becoming a movie nowadays when it comes to the series. So them wanting to do a movie for 10th Vesta would work perfectly in terms of the current, way anime, the industry is operating and stuff. And so for me, I think that would be good as well. I think it would be good as well if they did that in terms of, the way they could generate revenue that could easily fund the future of the Danmachi anime franchise and stuff like that. But do I want it? No, it's fourth on my list. While it has some important bits and bobs, right? It is still non-canon. I would rather they do other things first and foremost, like SwoRoria, like Argonaut, like Asura Record, before they do 10th Vesta. Personally, that is just my opinion on that. But yeah, like I said, you will see the return of Artemis in this one. You'll see the return of the Apollo Familia in Ares Vesta. It is a very interesting story. It is a very, very interesting story. It is probably one of Omori's weaker stories as well, nonetheless, to be quite honest. But if they are able to expand on it with material that Omori had released subsequently in terms of, additional things and bobs, I think this could work. I think the story could work exceptionally well. It just needs a little bit more before Omori does it. So, I mean, I don't know if he plans on maybe doing a manga iteration of Ares Vesta or something along those lines, because that could help it a lot, to be quite honest. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to just wait and see. But yeah, let me know which one of the four would you guys like to see the most. I have a feeling, predicting it, I think a lot of people will probably say SwoRoria, because I think it's the most obvious one that I think a lot of people want. But let me know in the comment section down below. You guys can let me know what you guys would like to see the most out of the four that I mentioned. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, all that sort of good stuff, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy, everybody. Bye bye.